Good day, everybody. I hope you're really enjoying all of our sessions today. Welcome to the final day of CBC 2023 for an event called Employee-Driven Career Development. This session is going to be offered in English and French simultaneously. To view the French session, please click on the agenda and click on the French title for Employee-Driven Career Development, and you'll be able to access the French session. I want to begin today by acknowledging that I'm here on the traditional unceded territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. I would like to ask all of you to acknowledge the traditional territories that you are from and where you work and reside. And I would encourage you to make a real commitment to move beyond acknowledging your ancestral homes and moving towards taking tangible steps to decolonize your mindsets, your workplaces, and the programs and policies contained within them. Folks, Career Bootcamp is the largest conference in the Government of Canada. The only goal is to support you in your career journey. As we move through today's session, please ask questions using the Q&A button in the language of your choice. You can vote for questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up button. And as with all Fin sessions, this session will be recorded so you can go back and check out the recordings at a later date. You can find them on our YouTube channel. This is going to be a fantastic session. We have an excellent lineup with some of the most brilliant minds in the public service. So I'll pass it over to my colleague, Alexa, who will be moderating today's session. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Alexa, and I will be your moderator for today. So I am project officer and lead for communications at the Federal Youth Network. And today actually marks my full year of working with them. So it's been awesome. I was previously HR coordinator at Infrastructure Canada. And before that, I was the lead of the student program at Indigenous Services Canada. So I'm just going to continue with reading the objectives for today before we get into our introductions for our panelists. So today's learning objectives is searching for job opportunities in the government in a variety of locations, list staffing actions that support career mobility, identify which staffing actions are contingent on operational needs, and prepare for conversations with your manager regarding your individual career aspirations. So before we head into introductions, there's a poll that we have for you. So the first question is, how much have your managers encouraged you to grow in your career? The second question is my manager's job to develop me for future roles? That's a good question. And the third question is deployment, interchange, acting assignment, secondment, non-ad. I know what every one of these mean, question mark. So you can answer anonymously and be honest, and we'll just collect the data for our own statistics afterwards. So we'll let you answer that poll. In a few moments, we will share the results because I'm very curious as to what all 700 of you are feeling today. All right, so for the first question, how much have your managers encouraged you to grow in your career? The top answer would be 3 out of 5. 5 being all the time. So halfway through, that's pretty interesting. The second question, the top answer is also 3 out of 5. So the question was, is my manager's job develop me for future roles? 5 being it's up to my manager. Super interesting. And then the third, the top answer for is a deployment, interchange, etc. I know what every one of these mean. No, I do not. At 68% said, no, I do not. So that's awesome to know because we will give you some answers today. So first, our panelist on this list is Chris Scipio. So Chris, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Scipio. I'm here in Ottawa, traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe. I guess you do have my bio on screen, so I won't take too long to speak to that. But I'm excited to be here. In the daytime, I'm the Deputy Director for the Black Executive Network, which supports Black executives and those aspiring to be executives. And where possible, we work with the government to address anti-Black racism. Talent management, career development is something that's a huge priority for us. And I'm excited to be here today to share some insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And next, I'd like Roy Nader to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Alexa. And I want to thank Federal Youth Network for inviting us here today. Career development, especially for new employees coming to the government, is something that I'm passionate about. We need young blood to take us to the next level. I started my journey with the government in 2005. And by 2010, I was hesitating if I should continue or not. Part of the reason is I saw the technology moving at a faster rate, but we're not equipping our employees for that. So I started a mission of taking upon myself to find what I can do as an employee to help other government employees with that journey, so be able to leverage technology to the max. And I started clicks and tips on the side of my desk in the region where I was working. And long and behold, 1 out of 20 government employees at the time became part of that initiative, helping each other to find new ways of working. Mind you to say, it's not about the technology, it's more about the people. I do have experience working in the field operation or in the region. And now I'm working for the last few years, I've been working with headquarters. So I've been exposed to both different avenues of working. I look forward to having a great discussion with Chris as well as Gigi and discussing ways that you as an employee in the government who just joined can leverage and speed up your career in a manner that is in line with your passion. I pass it back to you, Alexa.
Thank you so much, Roy. And our third panelist, Gigi Shang.
Thanks so much. And thanks, Chris and Roy. I'm so excited to be on this panel with you. So my name is Gigi. I'm a senior analyst working on digital talent at Service Canada. I'm actually very new to the federal government, starting in, I believe, 2020. So just under 2 or 3 years. In a previous life, I've worked in grassroots organizing to end child marriages in Malawi, was a founding member of the Digital Service Standard Training Team at the Ontario Digital Service, got to work with civil society organizations to leverage grants, in the nonprofit sector from the Ford and MacArthur Foundations, and most recently advised on e-governance policy for the municipality of Dungudi in the government of Nepal. So a little bit of non-traditional pathway, varied experience. So I'm eager to speak to folks today in terms of what following your dreams and passion might look like and the possibilities that can come out of that, even if your pathway background isn't what you'd usually expect. So this is really exciting to be on this panel today. Currently working on talent retention within a delivery service and product delivery team in Service Canada. So we're looking at maybe some new roles for government, such as product management, UX design, UX research, UI, service design, and what those roles and opportunities might look like in the future of government, and how you can get involved if that's your passion. So yeah, back over to you, Alexa.
Thank you, Gigi's. Wow, all three panelists, amazing, experienced, knowledgeable, and such an honor to be a moderator today and be among the three of you. Very excited. So why not we get started with the very good questions. So the first question I want to ask the three of you is, where can I find out what learning opportunities are available to me in the government?
That's a good question, Alexa, and there is so much of them. There is a formal learning and there is an informal learning, and they both are as important. When it comes to formal learning, the first step should be speak to your manager or your supervisor. They will direct you on internal websites, on internal resources. For example, at ESDC, we have something called the college, where we can log into a system, a platform, and we can search all the different learning available. I know many departments have something similar where you can go and search a database that has internal learning. But there's also not to forget that the Canada School of Public Service, you have access to it. They have free learning that you can go in and you can be able to do the courses. So you can speak to your manager about some time off if possible, if it's in line with your career to do these courses. There's a lot of different committees out there, like the Federal Youth Network, the Managers Community, National Managers Community, and there's so many out there that you can actually subscribe and learn from the different events that they are doing. When it comes to informal learning, I mean, where do I start? LinkedIn Learning is a good place to start. If you're on LinkedIn and you navigate, sometimes you get the pop-up of some learning that might interest you. There's stuff on Udemy you can sign up for. You can go on YouTube. There's so much learning in today's world that you can access. The question you want to ask yourself is, what am I passionate about and what do I want to learn? Start from there and then look for where you can find it. There are plenty of places. I'm sure there's other stuff. I'll pass it to Gigi, who's been doing some work with new opportunities or new jobs that exist that can guide us a bit on where you can find learning for those new jobs that are coming down the pipe.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roy. And I'm going to add on something that he said, which is seek out these learning opportunities. He mentioned Udemy. I'm also going to mention Coursera. Many of these platforms actually at the end of the learning will give you a certification. So if you think about the kind of contribution that you want to make, whether it's in product management, whether it's in UX research or design, there are courses that are free or cheap. And if they're cheap or if they cost money, that's a conversation that I encourage you open with your manager in terms of what funding might be available that will actually give you a certification at the end of it that you can then apply and use on your resume when you go forward with some of these roles. And a lot of these roles, they are nascent in government. They've blossomed in the tech industry, but in government, there's a big need for digital service delivery roles. So that's what I'll say, and I'll pass it over to Chris.
Thanks so much, Gigi and Roy. So I will echo all that they say, but I think another way for learning is through experience and practice, right? So if you're able to join a working group and get that exposure to a skill that you may not normally have a chance to acquire, and you can learn that way from doing it. Having a mentor is someone is another way to do it. For me, like the work I do, trying to advance Black inclusion, I spend a lot of time reading Harvard Business Review, reading articles online, research journals, right? So that kind of just reading, like just taking the time to read and stay on top of your topic is really important. But you got to also be thinking about the skills you need today and the skills tomorrow, right? Like you need to look at your career, I think in phases, like, 5-year phases and so on. So don't just think about the learning needs for the immediate role, also try to think about the learning needs in the future. And the last thing I would say is talk to your colleagues. Like if there's someone who's in a position that you aspire to be in, like try to meet with them and say, what was your learning journey? What can I do that you did? Can you impart wisdom on me? Oh, I should take this course. So I think you got to take advantage of everything that's available, right? We're in this digital world where we're very interconnected. I use social media for a lot of learning. A lot of my learning has come from engaging with educators who are doing anti-racism work and addressing anti-oppression work and so on, right? So that's putting yourself in spaces where knowledge is being exchanged. I think is another way that you can do it. Thank you. Good. Back to you, Alexa.
Thank you. No, those were all amazing answers. And I want to kind of grow onto this question by asking another question. So what staffing mechanisms exist for me to be able to move around my organization or in an organization?
Alexa, we work with the government of Canada. Within 5 years, there's going to be like 400,000 jobs in the government. Many people feel, what jobs are available for me? Where can I apply? Where can I go? And again, you can go that path, but if you're a passionate person and looking to grow yourself, especially post-pandemic where things have changed, you'll find that with the AI and all what's happening, there's some new jobs going to be appearing in 5 years. In fact, I don't know if you know that, Alexa, but Gigi and Chris, we were talking before, and we realized all three of us, we have jobs today that did not exist 3 to 5 years ago. So if I'm looking for a normal career path, and all the mechanism exists, we wouldn't have been in those positions today if we didn't prepare ourselves for it. So I can share with you some mechanism available, and we can talk after about how do you prepare yourself in a post-pandemic world, and how do you actually take the steering wheel and be in charge of where you want to be in the future and the steps you can make. So obviously, the first option is assignments that are available in your in your direct entourage with your manager. That's a good discussion you can have. Working in networking and social media can expand that to see other assignments available in other federal government or around you that can help you. Deployment is a word that is used when another department wants to bring you over and you become an employee of that department. So you are deployed into that department and you belong to that department. Unlike assignment, where you come in as a visitor, as a guest, if you like, for a period of time, and then you go back to your department. Secondment is also another word that is used. Is actually when you go to another department on an assignment, especially that is used between, let's say, an agency and a federal government. An agency would be something like CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, which does not belong to the federal core government like PSPC, CSPS, or ESDC, which is part, and it's easy to move around. So they use more something like called secondment. The other one people have used is non-advertised, and those I can specify they are very, very, very rare to have. Where, for example, I see Chris, he has very unique talent that is hard to find, and I have an immediate need. So it takes a lot of steps for me as a manager to bring him over and make him and give him a deployment as a non-advertised. So right away, you'll see that I'm hiring Chris. I'm bringing him to my department. I'm going to give him this level, this information, and he's going to start on this date. Those are non-advertised. While it's easy for the candidate to get for the workload because you're not doing any selection process or anything else, but they're very, very rare. I can't emphasize that enough. There's international interchange programs also, where sometimes you can find assignment in other government agencies. It could be around the world where you can go in. The agency pays back revenue, Canadian government, and you'll be able to work abroad and come back. And again, those are rare. These are some of the available opportunities out there. There's also other stuff called micro mission, for example. I don't know if you've heard about it, Alexa, where you can be borrowed for 3 weeks or something like this to go and work with another manager to gain another experience while you're still employed with your current manager. That is something you want to speak with your manager if you're trying to gain opportunity. Remember the word called micro mission. If your manager is open to it, it depends on operational need. Another opportunity that might interest people that are looking for variety of work and getting different experience is called the free agent program. This is where you become a government employee, federal government employee, but you could be borrowed, or you're like a self-contractor if you want, but still a government employee. You will go out and seek opportunity within the government. You negotiate the level that you want, the assignments that you're looking for. They do have opening from time to time. If you're an adventurous person, if you're self-motivated, if you've got unique skill set, the free agent program might be something that will interest you at the same time. I hope that answers the formal opportunities that are available.
Yes, thank you, Roy. That was a lot. I should have been taking notes. That was amazing. But I don't want to take too much airtime. So, Chris, do you have any comments or anything to add?
I guess just a few things, because Roy gave a very detailed overview of all the staffing mechanisms. And I was learning a few things, right? One of the things I want to say about the non-advertising is, while it's helpful, it doesn't always happen equally. Like with the data from the Public Service Commission shows that for many Black and Indigenous public servants, they're not getting access to non-advertisers as frequently as non-racialized public servants. And in the case of myself, I had to be qualified in a pool to get the non-advertised, right? So it wasn't that I didn't do the competition, I still had to compete elsewhere. And oftentimes it's like, okay, because you're in a pool, that manager is then like leveraging that because it's the threat of, well, I'm going to leave. And I think it's a really harmful practice that we have in the public service, that the team that you're on normally doesn't run a competition. right? So you have to compete elsewhere to advance your career within your team, And I'm talking to a colleague who just messaged me who's like, oh, I'm leaving your old team because she was in a pool, they wouldn't take her, another department pulled her, right? So that also goes to, this is like employee-driven career, right? Taking ownership of your career. So you want to get yourself into pools so that you can leverage informal staffing, whether it's non-advertised or just reaching out to someone. One of the things that I'm on right now, and I guess, I know Ali and Jen, and for you, Haley and Alexa, it's kind of like an interchange, right? It's that we've left our home department and now we're working on special projects. So for you, it's the Federal Youth Network. It's a horizontal thing. For myself, it's the Black Executive Network. And those things are a little bit more innovative. So my email is still at National Defense. Leave has been National Defense and all those things. But all of my work for the last year and the next year ahead is dedicated specifically to the Black Executives Network. So that is like an interesting thing. And another way to move around is some of the, employee resource groups, their own created talent initiatives. So I know, for example, my network, the Black Executives Network, we have a future leaders binder where we collect profiles of promising Black talent who've been experiencing career stagnation, right? People who have been in the same role for 4 or 5 years, despite having immense qualifications, people who are experiencing being capped out at like a AS3, AS4 level, even though they got 2 master's degrees, bilingual, and all of those things, and tons of experience. So we've created this initiative where people create a profile, and it's a binder of an e-binder of talent. And we then share that with hiring managers. So that enables some informal staffing, or as well as formal, I guess mainly informal staffing, right? Because these are people who may or may not be in pools, but they are getting new jobs, hopefully career advancement. And I think that's one of the newer things that we need to have in the public service to help people to move along. So if you belong to an equity-seeking community, you want to reach out. I know the Knowledge Circle for Indigenous Peoples, KCII, they also have a talent binder for executives, and Benron also has that. So those are like 2 other innovative ways people can move around, because you often hear people say, I would like to have a more representative team, more diverse perspectives, but I don't know where to find the talent. I don't believe that. If you want to find it, you could find it, but these initiatives are theirs to remove that one excuse that people make. I'll turn to Gigi to share some stuff about digital talent and all those new emergent stuff. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Chris, and thank you so much. I want to personally thank you for bringing up some of the equity-seeking group opportunities in particular, because as we know, barriers exist. So I'm going to drop a few names. If you're interested in tech delivery within government, these are some departments who are really at the forefront of this. TBS, IRCC, CRA, ESDC, especially Service Canada, the Canada School of Public Service, and the CDS. So if developing a career around the future of digital government is something that you're interested in, these are groups who are working really hard at the forefront of that. I also want to call out communities of practice, seeking the people who are doing the work that you want to be doing or are interested in. There's a product management community of practice on Slack. It's called Concepcion-GC-Design. It's a Slack channel of content designers, UX designers within government. So these communities exist. Reach out, make friends, and yeah, that's all I would add, because Roy and Chris covered it.
Yes, thank you, Gigi. And Roy and Chris, honestly, this answer to this question was honest and like—
Alexa, I can add one more thing that's actually
Of course.
important, is that in the government, when your performance is actually at an exceed level and you worked very hard, one of the things that you can have a discussion with your manager is about being put on a talent management program. So if you're actually excelled during the last year in your PMA, speak about a talent management program where you could be sought out for special assignment that give you additional exposure, work, or experience that normally you wouldn't get in your field. So the talent management program would actually be a discussion between you and your manager about where they can push you to the next level to help you in helping your department to get better.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree. Everything, I've just learned so much in this one answer. It's I'm definitely gonna have to watch this recording because I've been a public servant and I didn't even know half of everything that has been said. So I'm very impressed. Thank you, the three of you, for these honest answers. So I am gonna move on to the third question. What kind of learning can I ask for when upskilling? Mhm.
So I kind of think that you need to know what you need somewhat, right? Like I'm reading in the chat and people like, oh, talking to my manager, and even that poll that we started off with, do managers support career advancement? They probably do for some people. I have not experienced support from my manager until much later in my career, significantly later in my career. At the beginning of my career, there was no support. In fact, I had managers who intentionally blocked my development, right? Because that is the reality of a public service that is systemically racist, right? Anti-Black racism is a real thing. Anti-Indigenous racism is real. There is gender biases, there's all these other things. But there are some groups that experience it a lot more than other people. And there are departments and teams that are toxic, and people need to protect themselves in those places, right? So when it comes to seeing about the skills you need, think about the impact you want to have, the kind of work you need. One of the easiest things you can do is if you go on jobs.gc.ca and look at posters for jobs that you're interested in. I would recommend at 2 levels higher, right? Because you're trying to upskill towards the future, right? And be like, okay, do I have these skills? What am I missing? And work backwards to try to close those gaps. Also pay attention, like when you go to panels, when you go to conferences, like the people who are speakers, what kinds of things are they speaking on, right? What was their journey? What kind of courses did they say? What did they take? And you emulate some of those things, right? But you really have to be aware of what you want to do. And also, things are fluid. Like Roy mentioned, 3 to 5 years ago, the jobs that the 3 of us have here didn't exist, right? So I couldn't tell these 3 years what I needed. I guess you just try to take training and skills that are transferable. I think, public service work, problem solving, creativity, working in teams, right? Regardless of what the subject matter is, there are some common things you need, right? And obviously, there are very specialized fields, like if you're doing tech and digital, like Ruby on Rails and Python and all these things. I don't know any of these coding things, but I know they exist, right? And obviously you need to know about, smart technologies and all those other things and artificial intelligence. But on top of those specialized things, there's certain things that you need no matter what your career is. And you also want to focus on those skills. So don't just limit it to special or technical skills. Also pay attention to the other skills you need to have a really well-rounded career, is what I'd recommend. And I would also say, seize opportunities. So if you can take a position on another team, hopefully they will give you an acting opportunity because you're delivering at a higher level doing new work. But if not, even if it's lateral, sometimes getting that exposure is going to help you get new skills, right? Because one of the worst things that you can do is move up too quickly, because then you get stuck, because then you're not able to deliver because you didn't have the right skills, right? So it's also practicing the skills when you acquire them, and sometimes you got to spend some time in that job to really practice it in a lot of different ways. But I'll turn to Gigi to add to that. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. So something that I used to do, and honestly, maybe I still do it a little bit. I used to just go on LinkedIn and look at the roles that I was curious about. I didn't necessarily have the skills for them, but I was curious about them, and I wanted to know the kind of people that got to do these like amazing jobs that as a new grad, I didn't know how to get my foot into. And so I would literally just stalk people's LinkedIn profiles. And sometimes I reached out to them. And so that is a possibility, especially if you're already in the GC and you have connections with folks that have connections with others, to be like, hey, like I'm really interested in learning what it is that you do. This is what I'm interested in, and I think that I could learn a lot from you. That's one piece. The other thing that I really want to call out from Roy is that he shared such a beautiful story around a mentee that he had, and I'll let him tell the story, but it really it spun this thing on its head around, you know, fitting yourself into the job to getting a job that fit who you are. So I think that's really important when we think about upskilling, that we're not just getting all the certifications that we can, but that we're really being guided by what it is that we want to do. So I'll pass it to Roy to tell that beautiful story.
Thanks, Gigi. And looking at the chat, I see a lot of people resonated with Chris's story. And I can share with you that many of us have been in a situation where unfortunately we feel we're not able to move forward for different reasons. Some of it, could be that our managers haven't been trained to be leaders sometimes. Think of it as, tomorrow you might be a team leader or manager. Are you equipped to have those managerial conversation, or are you struggling and trying to find the path for yourself as well? So sometimes it is a personal, sometimes it's knowledge, sometimes it's expertise. At the end of the day, it impacts you regardless what the reason is. So you need to take a step back and think about it. And I'll share the story that I shared with Gigi. And it was an eye-opening for me as a manager as well. I had an employee who was a student with us before, and I just took on that team, and she became a term. And as soon as the pandemic hits, she was struggling. I noticed she was withdrawing. I found that she just was worried at the end of the day. How is she going to fit in? How is she going to contribute and add value? And when I started talking to her, what was the most important thing I realized is to kind of take all the noises out and ask her what she's passionate about as a person, not as an employee. What does she like to do in her real life? And she answered, I like to dance. And the job that she had was actually helping us with a digital transformation. Her task at the time was printing and putting stuff on. When we do a physical event, she will print stuff, put it on the wall to direct people to the washroom, greet people at the door, maybe prepare the agenda from time to time. And it was very limited task. But when the pandemic hits, she just couldn't see herself adding value in a virtual environment. So she only thinks she can see herself is quitting and finding another job. So that message goes to anybody right now that feels stuck in their work, not supported, or if you feel that you can't move forward. So listen up carefully. And if you don't have a manager that supports you that way, find a mentor, find a family member, reach out to people like Gigi said on LinkedIn. And the secret word is ask for a virtual coffee just to learn a little bit more about them and be prepared when you go to that session. And here's an example of what I did with an employee that you can replicate to help yourself. So I started getting deep down into what is she passionate about. When she said dance, I asked her, what is it in dance that actually makes you want to do that? What attracts you to dance? I was surprised by her answer when she said, it's actually building a community. It's bringing people together and have a theater and get them have that emotional feeling after the dance. And that's what attracts me to it. So I asked her the question is, which part of that do you like more? Is it the dancing or is it the organizing and make that happen? And she stumbled for a moment and she replied, although I like dance, I like to be the person organizing to make people feel that way. So there's few things that came out of there about her passion is her need to connect with others, which was taken away by the pandemic. Her needs to take charge, it was also taken away. Her needs to have a vision and organize that. So she was an AS1 at the moment. And when I started having those discussions with her, I realized the potential that she had and the misalignment that we had. So I started asking the question, do you see how you have transferable skills between what you want to achieve and what we want to do at the organization with digital transformation? She said, not really. I just don't see how me printing stuff and putting on the wall can help. I said, okay, that's one way to look at it. But in reality, let's look at what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get people together to create an emotional feeling and attachment to the transformation we're trying to do. And we're doing that through events where we'll have people in the front, instead of dancing, probably giving presentations. It involves a bit of dancing if you want, but we're dancing around the words right now. But at the end of the day, what if I tell you, I need you? I need you to start thinking how we can organize events that make people feel they want to be part of a community that wants to change the organization we're in. Because I would like that very much. Because what is it that you need? What skills do you require? So we started writing all the skills she wanted. The next question is, what are your gaps? So we started identifying her gaps for learning, which is learning social media, learning how to do virtual events, learning how to organize virtual events. And it starts flowing so easy when she started seeing herself. She was able to imagine herself doing the job that she needs to make that happen. So the next question that I ask her is like, is it something you're ready to take on? Do you see yourself enjoying that and taking it on as we move forward? She goes, yes. I said, do you allow me to mentor you? She said, yes. So throughout the time, throughout 18 months, she has grown from a person that was printing stuff to a person that is leading the events and organizing events, writing the blogs, bringing people on, taking stuff on, knowing how to organize events. And the events we were organizing, just to let you know, by the third session we had, because of the experience that we had over 1,000 people per session in a small organization. That's quite significant, by the way. So the ability for you to bring your passion to work is there. And if you feel that you're not getting the support where you are, then remember these strong words. You are being redirected to realign your passion with your career. And that's probably not the career for you or the culture. It's nothing wrong you're doing. It's somebody who's helping you indirectly, regardless if they're stopping you or not, to find a better place that fits you and find your passion. But to make that happen, you need to step up and start asking those strong, important questions is, what am I good at? What am I passionate about? What do I want to do? And if the job doesn't exist, it might exist in a few years from now. So start researching, start talking to people, asking for virtual coffee. Go out there, take charge of your career. If you're waiting, you're like the other 80% of the people out there. If you want to be the one that gets the job, that gets called on because you're good at what you do, then you need to stand out and stand up. And that's my story, Gigi. I'll pass it back to Alexa.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you opening up with this honest conversation and this wisdom. And I do want to linger on this answer because, wow, that was some amazing stories. But we do have 45 questions from the audience. Yeah, I know, right? Would love to do a round 2, though, of this session if anyone's interested. So last question for me before we go to the audience is, how can I support my manager in supporting my career development? So maybe Roy, do you want to start?
That's such an important and profound question, right? We kind of covered it in the story where know what you want. And most of people, they say, well, I want to make a difference. And that's what I get as an answer when I ask my employee, how can I support you? They say, I want to make a difference, but I don't know how. So start thinking about what don't you like to do. If you don't know what you like to do, think of what you don't like to do. And that's 80% probably of the jobs that we have. So it helps you to narrow and focus. And it's okay if you're still trying to explore, trying to learn. What's important is that try to keep in mind is that every few years you need to reinvent yourself and re-ask yourself, what do I stand for? What is my branding? What is my brand name where people recognize me for so I can stand out? So when you go to your manager, have a clear idea of the direction you want to go. It might not be the destination, but it just needs to be the direction. For example, if you're at CRA, majority of the job are collection agent and accountant. And if there's 2 things that you don't like, that helps to narrow down to administrative work, management work, transformation. There's so many other jobs that are available. So have a discussion about what you don't like and what you're good at and what you're passionate about. And start from that angle, at least to help your manager. If you know what you want, have a clear idea of where you want to go, what your gaps are. Be open and transparent with your manager. If you don't have that opportunity with your manager, then that's okay. It does happen sometimes. Know that you need 3 support systems in your career and write them down. You need a coach, you need a mentor, and you need a sponsor. A coach will help you be better at what you're doing today. A mentor will help you to be better of who you are as a person and establish your branding. A sponsor will help you to go to the next level of your career and open up doors for you. And that is the hardest one, a sponsor, to be there to find that sponsor for you. But to find a sponsor that's at the director level and higher, you need to equip yourself and prepare yourself. Don't be too quick at jumping level. Be very quick at improving yourself for that next level so the doors will open up for you. Because if you move up too fast, it's lonely on the top and it's hard to go back and upgrade your skill sets.
Well said. Thank you, Roy. Gigi, Chris, would you like to add anything?
So Roy just in the previous answer shared a beautiful story. I want to share a story too of something that I learned in my early career. So after graduating, I started a job with a startup and I ended up working 7 days a week. That's right, no weekends, 16 hours a day to get the work done. And that's what happens sometimes in a small organization working really, really quickly, right? But here's the catch, and I'm going to talk about pay now. I was getting paid $40,000 for doing that amount of work, which is, adds up to less than minimum wage if you really calculate it. And I was getting burnt out. A year into the job, I quit the job with no backup plan. 2 months later, I see that they reposted the same exact role for $80,000. And I just felt sinking in my stomach, the amount that I had been undervalued by them, but also how I had undervalued myself. So this is how I'm going to answer this question on how to support your manager in supporting your career, is that you need to learn how to be your best champion. Sometimes we're pulled away from our main jobs and our main tasks because we're good at something, whether it's data collection, whether it's talking to people and running meetings or taking notes. And so we're pulled away from our main jobs and we're doing all these extra things because we're passionate and we care, right? And I'm not saying don't put your best effort in. I'm not saying do less than you want to, but I am saying that you need to really value what you are doing so that you can communicate it with others so that they can see the value in what you're doing. And sometimes it's a matter, it's the difference between earning 40K and 80K. So I'm just going to drop that in there. And yes, I really, really encourage all of you to think about what you are contributing and be really confident in the value that you bring. I'll pass it to you, Chris.
Hard to follow that, right? There's a lot of gems. A few things I would say is, it's your career, right? Like not all managers care about development. Some people just want to manage results and outcomes. Not everybody cares about people management, right? So you got to really take control of that. You got to be aware of what you want, like it was being said. But, when it comes to sponsorship, it is no doubt, it definitely helps transform your career, right? Because it's people amplifying your work, saying your name in places where it's not normally being heard. But again, going back to the equity and the barriers in the federal public service, we have a public service where less than 2% of all executives are Black. We have a public service where the majority of Black public servants cap out at like $70,000 salary, right? Which is a junior mid analyst. So there's less access to sponsorship. There's a study from the Harvard Business Review that says about, in the private sector, about 20% of highly talented white workers have sponsors, but only 5% of Black workers have sponsors. And I would imagine that the numbers for Indigenous people are worse. I would imagine if we think about numbers for racialized women, Black women, Asian women, it is worse than that for white women. So there's all these things that you need to be aware of. You need to be aware of these barriers, and that is why you have to really take control of your career, because you can't just rely on the manager, right? So once you know what you want to do, you have your path, I think talk to other people, and also think about it, not so much like the whole career, because things can change. You never know what kind of opportunity you're going to get. A year ago, I was the senior GBA plus advisor in national defense, right? Because of my network and someone who actually did sponsor me, they recommended me to the Black Executive Network to lead a secretariat. And in the last 9 months, the work that I have done has been amazing. No, my manager, when I was doing the GBA plus work, didn't help me get here, right? It was someone who knew me. So That's another way to manage your career, is that you can look for other people in the organization who are leaders who believe in you, because you may not have a manager who has your back. So you can't rely on that person. I think there's too many public servants, maybe especially the newer public servants, who come in from the private sector or like, oh, I'm going to do good work and I'm going to get my promotion. That's not how it works here, right? Do good work. You might be in the same role for 10, 15 years. How many people have trained people who then became their boss, right? Like, I've spoken to people who are like, yeah, I'm just waiting for a job. And I'm like, no, you have to go out and you have to compete. You have to take control, right? So, it was great, like all those different resources that people shared today. And I encourage everyone to tap into that and really become your own career manager, right? Don't rely on your manager. Be your own career manager. So how do you help your manager manage your career? You become your own manager. That is what I would say to you. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Wow, wow, wow. I am feeling empowered, inspired. These speakers are really the leaders that I want to emulate. Thank you so much for sharing your truth. And now we have 50 questions and not 15 minutes. So I will ask the top rated questions. So the highest rated or upvoted question for you three panelists is, how long can you be away from your substantive position in an acting or other assignment? I want to take these opportunities and grow my career, but I worry that they would leave me without a job to go back to if my substantive is backfilled.
I'll take a try at that. So I would say, why go back? Like, forward ever. Like, like if your previous job didn't value you, like how they didn't value Gigi, right? But this other team sees that you're a diamond, that you bring talent to the file, and they're going to give you acting opportunities. Keep getting those acting opportunities. Ideally, I know like once upon a time, I think if you were acting for like 2 or 3 years, they had to substantiate it. I don't know if that's still the case, right? So those things happen, but the acting assignment, you negotiate that. You speak to your host director in your previous one and say, you know what, this is going well. In my own case, I was supposed to only be with Benran for 1 year. It's going to be 2 years, right? So it's going to go until hopefully 2024 as opposed to 2023, right? And that is because things change, right? I realized that this work is a much better fit for me than the work that I was doing before. And that is again about knowing what's good for you. So I encourage you to have an abundance mindset, not scarcity mindset. Don't worry about that. Like, you do good work, that new team is going to recognize you. They'll make you permanent, or you'll find a new job. Like, keep applying, keep looking. Yeah.
Super well said. Thank you, Chris. Roy, Gigi, want to add, or should we jump to the next question? Up to you.
Just to add, from logistic perspective, there's a legal case that after 2 years, the employer has the right to backfill your position. So if you're away on a sick leave for more than 2 years, this is a legal case that has happened. But most of the time, a recommendation is speak to your executive and manager about why you want to go somewhere, get their support. Anyhow, you need their approval to go do a secondment and approval. So make sure that you always have management support, so your supervisor, your director, or somebody at your level. It is not always easy, as we have heard from Chris or other people, but in those cases, then why do you want to go back? Again, you're being redirected.
Well said. Thank you, Roy, Chris. Gigi?
I think that's it. Forwards and onwards. If you're having an opportunity to do what you really want to do elsewhere, take the risk, go take it, because that will be aligned with your heart and your mission. And like Roy said, after 2 years, that's a lot of time to decide if it's the right spot for you.
Thank you. I'm so glad public servants are hearing this. Okay. Next most voted question is, I have a loyalty complex, getting in my own way with career growth because I don't want to abandon my team that I'm very involved with. How does one balance achieving a respectable amount of longevity with a team with advancing when an opportunity presents itself? So I guess similar to the first question, but want to take a go?
I've just got it. It might be corny, and it's contextual, of course, but it's business, not personal. I think that if you have a solid relationship with your team members and with your manager, and you want to grow in your career, they will support you with doing that. And making a decision for yourself, you can do that while remaining respectful of your human relationships. So I think I know public servants, they have a tendency to put their all into a role, but sometimes we need to step back and understand, what's business and what's personal. And I think anyone who conflates that and tries to make you feel guilty or uncomfortable for that, they are not in your corner.
Love it, love it, love it.
I just want to say that this person is very lucky, first of all. If you are torn between leaving your team to another position, you're very lucky, because priority number one in work is you have to ask yourself, is it really making more money, having more responsibility, or having an amazing team you want to work with, right? If it is an amazing team you want to work with, maybe there's extra responsibilities that you can have within the team that helps you to move forward your career while staying with that team for a longer period of time. Sometimes you got to take the risk and you're going to have to move forward and then bring back your team with you when you move up. Maybe that's another option you can look at.
I agree. Chris, would you like to add?
No, I think we kind of covered that one. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you so much. All right. So next top rated question. One of my biggest struggles I find is having a clear, direct, structured path for development. I'm neurodivergent, autistic/ADD, so the limitless options for development and career tracks is very overwhelming and anxiety inducing at times. Do you have any advice for creating a clear, structured career path for myself or other people struggling in this area? Very great question.
I would like to share something that worked for me when I was at university. I was in that path where there's so many options available and I didn't know which direction I wanted to take. And it makes it hard if you're a talented person who can learn things fast. You have more options that you want to take on, but it doesn't work. So what helped me is I take a piece of paper beginning of the year and I break it down into 4 sections. So I'll put them in as I'm speaking, I'll put them actually in the chat. So the first section I usually would put is career-wise. What do I want to do to improve my career? Could be learning opportunity, could be mentorship, could be whatever is required. The next section that I'm looking for is what do I want to do for networking so I can improve myself. So it's one thing to have the learning opportunity. It's another thing to have somebody who opens the door for you to be able to actually achieve that or get that extra opportunity that is available. The next one that I looked for is, especially for the introvert, is look for opportunity to improve your social EI or empathy opportunity. So that means you want to put yourself out there in a social event. Look at meetup.com, for example, and find ways to go for Toastmasters or somewhere else. Because you might get the career, you have the knowledge that you want, the door is open for you, but can you impress that person that actually going to hire you to get that job? So you want to improve your social ability, your EI, your empathy in finding settings that helps you. And finally, do something fun for yourself. It's not always about work. So find something just to have that rounded approach to improving life, and take something extravagant. I take capoeira once, which is another type of self-defense that is done in Brazil because I thought it was fun. And next time I took archery, and another time I took something else. It really exposed me to go out of my shell and learn something new. So these are 4 things that I would suggest that you write it down of things that you want to do and divide it by quarter. Why quarter? Because it's, I should say, more semesters. So you can take courses based on semesters that is given at the college, at school, at high school, or somewhere else. So I put it in the chat. You want stuff for your career, stuff to improve your social ability, your EI, your empathy. It helps you a lot if you're going to become a manager or a leader. You don't have to be in a supervisor role, but you could be in a leader position, asking others to volunteer and doing something on their own time to help you with your goals. Networking, EI, is emotional intelligence. So that helps you in the way you interact with other people. And the last one is networking. That's huge. So Federal Youth Network has a lot of networking activities. I understand there's one happening on WonderMe. That's one option that you can actually look at. And finally, something fun that takes you outside of your comfort zone. So I'm going to pass it to Gigi or Chris to see. I'm looking forward to learning from you guys what you have in store.
Do you want to go first, Gigi, or should I?
Go for it. I'll go after.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the public service career could be a very long career. So you don't need to have a plan for everything, right? Like you can adapt your plan in shorter timeframes, right? And also you got to do what makes sense to you, right? I think we have to, not everybody's going to follow the same path, right? Like different experiences. And I know through my work, working with the Black executives and working with other executives across the public service, you talk to them like, what did you do to get to where you went? And, yes, they do mention certain departments that you need to go to or certain types of work so that if you desire to be an executive, right? So, you got to have your central agency experiences. You got to know your something about contracting and, procurement and you got to know the policy development cycle, right? And budget and all that stuff. So there's different things you need to know, but you could have this really fruitful and exciting career where you have all these different experiences based on what comes up. So I think just be open to things. So like, I like Roy's idea of, mapping out the things that give you satisfaction in those different quadrants so that you can hone into those things. And then the other thing would be, just think about the impact you want to have, right? And if that job allows you to have an impact, then go there, follow your passion. And if afterwards you lose that impact or that passion for that work, it's okay to move on to something else. You don't got to have it all figured out. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Gigi?
Yeah, so I just want to thank this person for asking this question. It is really vulnerable to self-disclose in terms of neurodivergence. I think this question and this person mentioned being on the autism spectrum, having ADHD, and I just want to reflect that back that we are humans, and as the government of Canada, we are designing programs and services for the entire public. And that includes people with disabilities. That includes people who face barriers along any sort of spectrum and level. And that is so real. And what I'll say is that when I was a product manager, I led a team of around 7 people, and we were doing digital work. The hours were not 8 to 5. The hours are when you can work the best. And my designer would work 10 to 12, take a break until 4, and then work 4 until the rest of their hours were met. And I learned to do this from a leader who treated us as humans first, where if we had an emergency, if we needed to leave our desk, we were not tracked in terms of, our circle had to be green at all times, or we had to reply right away. And the reason that I share this is because these possibilities are available in government. And I think the more that we talk about the opportunities that are available and what is possible, the more that we can demand of this in spaces that are not possible or aren't there yet. And if we're somewhere that isn't there yet, to know that these opportunities exist as a guiding light. I think on this panel, we have 3 people already that you can reach out to. And yeah, I had another thought, but I lost it. If it comes to mind, I'll share it in the chat. Oh yes, here it is. A plug again for the digital government space, because we are designing services with accessibility as a top, if not the top priority. We are thinking about people who have sight impairment. We are thinking of, for the OAS CPP program, for example, we're thinking of people who are maybe older and not as familiar with technology. And the things that you might have been told are detrimental to your career or your advancement, they can be your superpower, because your voice and your lived experience is exactly what we want and need to have a responsibility for in government to design for. And yeah, so I'll leave that there. Plug for digital government if you want to move over and see some of this exciting work and work in a work environment where neurodivergence, difference are celebrated in these spaces.
Thank
Can I
you.
just add one thing, Alexis? So sorry. Take that. But like, you know what Gigi mentioned about being welcomed? That's really important, right? In managing your career, avoid toxic workplaces. Avoid the places that harm your psychological safety, because there are a lot of places in the public service where are harmful. So when you have a team like the one that Gigi's describing, where they actually allow people to be authentic, to bring themselves to work, where they put how you feel at the start, those are special teams. When you have a leader like Roy who's going to say to you, what are you really passionate about? How can I show you and make sure that the work I'm giving to you gives you value? Those are the places you want to be, because there's a lot of places you can go that you're going to be crying at the end of the day. You're going to be unhappy, and you're going to take that out on yourself. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to be gaslighted. So it's important to know those good places. I just wanted to make sure I made that point. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt you, Alex, but I had to make that point.
No.
If we want to get to do conclusions, closing remarks.
Yeah, I would have felt bad if I didn't let you speak that one last. So thank you.
I gotta add this one. I gotta add one thing. I keep telling my team, I know we were closing out, but this is important. I hear a lot of young people are chasing the next job, are chasing the next title or appointment. My advice to you is look for three things that is more important than what you're actually going to be your job. Is who you're working with makes a big difference. That's number one. What are you asked to do to make sure it's in line with your passion? And number three, are you valued for what you're asked to do? How much are you paid for it? That's number three, which Gigi hint on it. So three things you need to look for. Who are you working for as a leader? What are you asked to do? So it's in line with your passion. And are you valued, which is in line with how much you're going to be, is it in line with what you deserve to be paid for? Thank you.
Great ending. Thank you so much. Huge round of applause for our amazing panelists, beautiful human beings. We do have a quick poll for you just for our own personal feedback, totally anonymous. And I would love to finish this beautiful session and day of CBC with Ali Khan with some last minute words. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alexa. That was so powerful, so inspiring. We really learned a lot today. We learned from Chris about the amazing initiative out of the Black Executive Network, the employee binder that will enable some informal staffing actions to occur to address the career stagnation of Black employees. We learned also from Gigi on how to develop a career around digital government and the importance of employee-driven communities of practice. And of course, we learned from Roy on how folks could not only develop themselves, but many other people as well, and do that all from the sides of their desks. We learned quite a bit from such a dynamic group of public servants, and they came to keep it real today. They did not sugarcoat anything. They told you exactly what it takes to advance in your public sector career, despite some of the many challenges we have in the public service of Canada. Thank you so much for joining us today. This concludes the sessions for day one. Be sure to join us Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time for another exciting day of CBC. There's also going to be today an opportunity to network with colleagues from across the federal public service. It'll be on the Wonder Me platform from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The link to all of the sessions, as well as all the networking events, can be found on the Expo. Resources will be available on our wiki page, and the recording of this event and all the other events that we had today will be on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you to our moderator, to our panelists. Have a great day, everybody.